Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with this amendment, I don't think any of us are opposed to actually having oversight to understand the health and safety with our fossil fuel productions. We want you to know the truth. We want you to see these reports. But as the gentleman from Wisconsin stated, there was a but in that. Not at this time. At this time, we aren't going to use that to go against fossil fuels, but we will use it later. We have been studying the science of fossil fuels. I worked in the oil and gas industry myself, and I know that no one produces energy better than we do, cleaner than we do. And instead, we have an administration right now that's begging Iran, begging Venezuela, begging Saudi Arabia, emptying our strategic petroleum reserves in the name of a midterm election. This is not in the name of public health and safety. This was in the name of an election to get fuel prices down $1 or $2 so they wouldn't have a complete decimation of their party and they would still hold on to their levers of power.
All right. So I just watched this clip and wow, this was one of those moments where you can actually feel the shift in the room. Lauren Boebert fires back at AOC, but here's the twist. She uses AOC's own words to do it. No yelling, no over-the-top theatrics, just a straight, clean reversal. And honestly, it's kind of like watching someone argue with themselves and lose. It's that classic situation where the receipts show up and suddenly things get real quiet.
And thankfully, the American people saw through some of that. But I mean, just going through this, fossil fuel extraction is a significant driver of carbon pollution. If carbon pollution is your main aim, then let's talk about managing our forests. Because one catastrophic wildfire emits more carbon emissions in a few short days than every vehicle in my state of Colorado running 24/7 for an entire year. So if carbon pollution is what you're after here, then let's get together and manage our forests. We have 6 billion standing dead trees in the western United States, all creating a massive tinderbox waiting to ignite. If you want to talk about water quality, then again, let's talk about managing our forests because healthy forests have healthy watersheds. We can have water resiliency discussions and water storage discussions where we're seeing policies in states like California where they're dumping hundreds of billions of gallons of water into the ocean where they otherwise could have stored it. If you're talking about low-income communities being impacted, well, let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about how our energy independence lowers inflation. And that's something that this administration surrendered on day one. This is something that they attacked immediately. We should be energy dominant right now. Our natural gas is 42% cleaner than Russia's. So why are you supporting Russia and their energy production and not America? Why are you pro-Putin when it comes to natural gas? Let's export liberty, export freedom around the globe and send our clean LNG to these countries who are currently relying on dictators. And when you're talking about the indigenous communities, well, I invite you all to come to my district where one of our tribes has the first ever zero emissions net power natural gas fired plant. This is innovative. And this is what we should be doing with our other plants, our coal-fired energy plant in Craig, Colorado. I would love to see that transition into what our tribes are doing on their reservations, on their tribal land. And so come out and see what this looks like. See what this net zero energy production actually looks like. Even in Colorado, our coal is arguably the cleanest coal in the world. And climate extremists are sacrificing that at the altar of climate change. And look, I'm not here to deny climate change. I don't think anyone here is. It happens 4 times every year. We're very, very much aware of that. And what we can do to lessen pollutants, we're here for it. That's why we are pro natural gas. That's why we want to lower folks' energy bills. Have you seen the price of energy bills lately? That's because we're banning gas electronics, appliances. That's because we're pushing all of this green energy that's not efficient, it's not reliable, it's not renewable, And I would love to see an actual study on our fossil fuel production, but not in this manner, because there are hidden elements in it. And for that reason, I will be opposing this amendment. And I yield back, Mr. Chair.
So let's walk through this step by step, because there's more going on here than just a viral moment. So here's what's happening. This whole exchange centers around energy policy, fossil fuels, environmental impact, and government oversight. Boebert's position is pretty clear. She's not against oversight. In fact, she says, yeah, we should study the health and safety impacts. But, and this is the key part, she doesn't want that used right now to restrict fossil fuel production. From there, she builds out her argument. She talks about how the U.S. produces cleaner energy than other countries, questions why America is relying on foreign oil, and connects all of that to inflation and economic stability. Then she pivots into environmental points: wildfires, forest management, water systems. So it's not just one argument, it's a whole chain, and the strength of it really depends on how well those links actually connect. Okay, let's slow this down for a second. That opening position, oversight without immediate restriction, on the surface, that sounds reasonable, right? You want data before making big decisions. Fair enough. But here's where it gets tricky. If you're already saying we're not going to act on this right now, then what exactly is the oversight leading to? Because oversight is supposed to inform action, not just exist on paper. Now, her point about U.S. energy being cleaner, that's actually grounded in some truth. American natural gas production is often more regulated and efficient compared to places like Russia or Venezuela.
So yeah, there's a solid argument there. But then she jumps from cleaner to we should expand it globally. Wait, what? That's a pretty big leap. Cleaner doesn't automatically mean sustainable long-term. It just means better than the alternative. Those are two very different standards. Now, when she talks about relying on foreign oil, this is where her argument gets stronger. Energy independence does matter. It affects prices, national security, leverage, real-world stuff people actually feel. But then she ties that in to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve being used for political reasons. And look, is politics involved in timing decisions? Probably. This is Washington. But saying that's the main reason? That feels like it skips over a lot. Global supply issues, demand spikes, market pressure. It simplifies something that's, honestly, pretty complex. Now here's where things take an interesting turn. Her wildfire argument. She says wildfires produce massive carbon emissions and that forest management should be the focus. That's not entirely wrong. Wildfires do release a lot of carbon. But here's the part that doesn't quite hold up. The idea that this replaces the need to address fossil fuel emissions. It's not either or. Both things can be true at the same time. And when arguments start forcing you to choose between two connected problems, that's usually a red flag. Then she brings in water policy, inflation, energy bills. It all gets tied together. And in the end, there's some truth in there. Energy prices absolutely impact cost of living. But inflation isn't just an energy story. It's monetary policy, supply chains, global markets, all mixed together. So what you're seeing here is a pattern. Strong individual points connected a little too loosely. And that's where the argument starts to wobble. By the way, if you're still with me here and you like this kind of step-by-step breakdown, go ahead and hit subscribe. That's what this channel is all about, cutting through the noise and actually thinking things through. Here's the problem. If your argument only works when you isolate each point and never test how they connect, then it's not a solid argument. It's just a collection of talking points. At the end of the day, this whole exchange, it's not really about who talked louder or who got the last word. It's about who stayed consistent when their own logic got tested. And in this case, let's just say, when your own words come back around on you, that's usually not the moment you want the spotlight.